Welcome to the System Simplified podcast, where we feature top leaders who share stories on how to successfully systemize a business. Now, let's get started with the show.
Hello, Adi Klevit here, the host of the System Simplified podcast, where I feature top founders, entrepreneurs, and thought leaders about systematizing a business. And this episode is being brought to you by Business Success Consulting Group, where we create, document, and implement processes and procedures so businesses can grow and thrive. And today's guest is Eliot Wajskol. Hi, Eliot.
Hi, Adi.
How are you?
I'm doing great, thank you, and pleasure to be here with you.
It's great to have you, and we're going to have a great conversation about why systematizing a business is so important for businesses to thrive and for entrepreneurs to have the life that they really want, because I know that you truly believe in that. But first of all, let me introduce you properly. So you are an EOS Implementer, right? So EOS stands for Entrepreneurial Operating System.
Right.
And you help businesses basically implement systems in place so they can actually have the life that they want, right? Would that be a fair statement?
I think that's a great statement.
Absolutely. And, and you have the experience. You've been on the other side. You grew companies to several businesses to $25 million, like from startup to 25 million, right? And you've been there, you experienced that. And then you switch to actually help businesses to coach entrepreneurs and help them achieve that or their own goals, right? The goals, like basically their goals, their vision, what do they want to have within their company so they can live the life that they want.
That's correct. That's absolutely correct. I think you captured that perfectly. And if I talk a little bit about my background or just share a little bit about how I came to do what I do or why I'm focused on it and so passionate about it. When I was 26, I joined a startup change management firm, professional services firm, founder-led. Truth be told, I never meant to get into business. It was one of the happiest accidents that I could have found in my life. It was a wonderful experience. It was one of those rocket ships. Over 11 years, we built that business to have clients worldwide, a really strong reputation in our industry, really strong culture internally. As you said, it grew to about $25 million when I rolled off. I then worked with a couple founders of a retail healthcare clinic chain based in Portland, Oregon, where I live, helped them put in place the processes and systems that they needed to grow and scale their business. In the end, that business has helped redefine the way that healthcare is delivered in the Pacific Northwest. Put in place the process systems they needed for their first outside capital to come in. And the best I can say is I had a really misplaced sense of invincibility, as I say so often to a lot of my clients from a business perspective. I started up my own business. It was a barbershop chain concept, and it did fine. I just couldn't grow it and scale it the way that I envisioned, the way that I wanted to. And from that experience, though, what I took was a couple of really big, profound ahas that really have informed how I've approached things and why I'm so passionate about this area. One was just my sweet spot was different. If one speaks the language that we speak with the Entrepreneurial Operating System, I always wanted to be the visionary guy. I'm a natural born integrator. So my sweet spot was different in the sense that I just work really well with business owners, with founders, with visionary leaders, helping them get to where they want to go. But the other aha that I had is that everything I had done, and we'd done some pretty decent things, everything I'd done up until then was through brute force. I jokingly said, not jokingly, it's for real, that I never really meant to get into business. But what that really is meant to say is I didn't have a natural mind for seeing, how the matrix is played out sometimes is the way I think about it. And so often, we did pretty decent things, but I felt so often that I was in a fog. I didn't quite know what lever do I pull? How do I orchestrate getting from point A to point B? Am I even doing the right thing? And when you do things by brute force, at some point in time, it just starts taking a toll. It takes its toll on the teams around you. It takes its toll on family. It takes its toll on friends. And so that was my other passion is, I am just obsessed with how do you get from point A to point B? How do you take an idea and make it happen? But is there a slipstream? Is there, when you look at certain business owners, when you look at certain leaders, it just seems like they make it easy. And I didn't know how to do that. And so that really was what my passion has been. And so since then, I've worked with hundreds of leadership teams, startups, mid-tier firms, companies, leadership teams within global organizations, multinational corporations. But the theme has always been the same. How can we get from point A to point B? So every now and then I sometimes say, let's not call it the entrepreneurial operating system. Let's call it the execution operating system. But how do we figure out a way to execute what it is that we want to set out to do in a systematic, consistent way? And if we can find a way to do that, we can just run businesses better, drive growth, but we can also ultimately live a better life. And when we can put all of that together, that's when magic happens.
Absolutely. And I know your passion is really help entrepreneurs live the life that they want, right? So give me some examples of what does it mean by the life that they want? You work with many entrepreneurs. Give me some examples of when you ask entrepreneurs or you work out with, you basically work out what is that life, what do they say?
So often people will describe it in two, and so maybe I could separate it in two parts. What are the words that they might say? One business owner that I worked with called and had just a crystal clear vision of what the life he wanted to live. And he called me and said, in 3 years, I want to be able to have my company actually work without me. I want to be able to, my son will be going to college, and I want to be able to leave with my partner and operate the business from anywhere in the world because we're going to go travel around the world. And oh, by the way, today, it's not there. So sometimes it's that. Sometimes I think it's expressed in a set of frustrations. We so often talk about that there are 5 frustrations that every business owner faces. It's a frustration of systemic people frustrations. Sometimes it's that sense of, why do I feel like I care more about this business than anyone else does? It feels like I'm not sure if I've got the right people in the right place. I'm not sure if my employees care about things as much as I do. I don't know if my customers certainly do, my vendors, my partners, my family. Why is it that I'm in this in ways that I just don't even want to be anymore? I thought I delegated it, but now it's back to me. Sometimes it's profit frustrations. I feel like for all the time and energy that I'm putting into this, everyone's excited about what's on the top line. But the secret is there's not enough that's falling to the bottom line or enough free cash flow. Sometimes it's a frustration of I feel like I'm just not in control of my business anymore. It used to be fun. I used to be able to pivot. I used to be able to adjust. And now the thing's got control over me. I don't have control over this thing. Sometimes it's that frustration that's we just can't seem to execute the way that we want to. In fact, I'm coming in with ideas to help make this thing happen. I'm listening to the podcast. I'm listening to the coaches. And if anything, I come in with that next new idea to figure out how do we actually execute, and everyone's ducking for cover, waiting for me to go away, and it goes right back to where it was. And so sometimes it's expressed in the positive. I want to go travel around the world. Sometimes it's expressed in, I just want this frustration, this pain that happens. It's lonely sometimes, being a leader, being a business owner, being an entrepreneur. I just want this to go away. So sometimes it's described that way. There's another part, Gino Wickman, who developed the Entrepreneurial Operating System, has just an amazing clarifying way of putting things. And he's also described what I think of as the ideal entrepreneurial life. And if you take all of that, which I've said before, what could that ideal entrepreneurial life look like? The one that I want to live, the one that I think so I want my clients to live. It's doing what you truly love, with people that you love, making a difference in the world, however you choose to define that, being compensated appropriately and with time, with your time for your other passions. And that's, I think, what I just am obsessed with. How do I help my clients get there? By being able to operate a business more effectively, being able to live that ideal entrepreneurial life. We sometimes call it the EOS life.
Absolutely. I actually interviewed Justin Reardon, which is the one that you were referring, your client that you were referring to. And I will include in the show notes the link to that episode, because I think it's very inspiring, the story that he tells and how he actually was able to achieve that. So I will definitely refer listeners to it so they can listen to it. So yeah, I mean, that is a great passion, because otherwise we become slaves to our businesses. So let's talk about it. Like, how do you get to live that life?
You bet. Well, let me just talk about maybe a set of tools, because I think ultimately, I think we were talking briefly at some point, but there's a quote that really sits with me, which is a James Clear Atomic Habits book. I just reread it, which is why it's fresh in my mind. But he's got a quote that's something to the effect of, we don't rise to the level of our goals, we fall to the level of our systems. And I think that the way that we get to that life is that we have a systematic way of approaching both our business and our life. I know that a lot of your listeners know or have heard a bit about the Entrepreneurial Operating System. So, but let me talk about maybe connecting some dots. So what might it look like when someone is living or spending time truly doing what they love? And so an example of that, one of my favorite tools, we call it the Delegate and Elevate tool. But I think it's taking a critical look, for example, at your time. And what do you truly love doing? And if you imagine a quadrant where at the one corner, the bottom right hand, I think I might be dyslexic, so I think it's the bottom right hand. I'm waving my hand. It is the right hand. But if you look at the bottom right hand quadrant and you just call that, what's all the stuff that I don't like doing and I'm not good at? And for me, that's a whole lot of stuff. I don't like it. I'm not good at bookkeeping. And for the longest time, I held on to bookkeeping. I don't like, and I'm not good at putting processes in place and then finalizing that last 20% to truly, truly operationalize them. I don't like it. I'm not good at paying bills that come in a check form. It's not that the money's not in the bank account, but it may well not get paid. I just can't quite seem to get around to it. There are all those things that we all do that we don't like and we're not good at, booking travel and so on. There are things that we do, if we just move to the other quadrant, bottom quadrant, there are things that we are good at, but we don't like doing, or maybe we shouldn't be doing at all. And I call this, in the corporate world, where really good people go to die, or at least their souls do. An example, I happen to be really good at creating PowerPoint presentations for executives that can take complex issues and simplify them and communicate them in a really effective way. And I did it for way, way too long, way past the expiration date. And the answer for me always was, when people said, why are you still doing it? It would just be easier than delegating it to my team. It's going to take too long to explain it to them.
Oh, no one can do it as good as I do, right?
The absolute worst one was, no one can do it as well as I can. And oh, by the way, my name might be attached to it. So there's so many of those things that people have and they hold on to that are below the line. If we go to the top of the quadrant, there are things that we like doing and we're good at. Plenty of stuff, wonderful. But then there's things that we love doing and we're truly, truly great at. Dan Sullivan calls it our unique abilities. And for business owners, for leaders, when we can be in roles that are the right role for the organization, we truly get those things, we want it, and we are our capacity, what we're great at. I'm using EOS language to describe that, and I can back up. But when we're in the right seat in our organization, when we're in the seat where we truly get it, truly want it, truly have the capacity, where we should be as business owners, and we can match that against what's in our unique ability, that's when our lives get better. That's when our business explodes, because we're spending time in the right place. And I'll just give an example from my personal life. When I looked at myself about 2 years ago, when I looked at where's my time spent, and by the way, you can use the Delegate and Elevate tool. Just write down every single activity that you do every day, for a full week, both at home and at work, and just see where that maps out. Do it with a partner, do it with a friend. When I looked at that critically, what I saw was I was spending about 16% of my time doing work I truly, truly love doing and that I was great at, doing the stuff that was at my unique ability. My goal now is to spend at least 80% of my working time there. And how do I get there? I've got to be able to delegate everything. I've got to be able to get it off of my plate. I've got a bookkeeper. I can, the amount of time it took for me to finally decide, why in the world am I still doing that? Wonderful. My assistant helps me out, et cetera. But every business owner, every entrepreneur has that opportunity when they can shape the right team around themselves. So that's just one example to your question of how do I get there? Well, one is to have the right tool that helps you get clear about where's your magic. And frankly, for every one of your leadership team members, that Delegate and Elevate tool I described is one part of it. From a business standpoint, when I could structure my organization right, when I structure my team right, we use a tool called the accountability chart, because I can't delegate to a team if I don't have the right people in the right seats. I then have to teach myself to let go. I have to teach myself to delegate and get convinced myself that there is an ROI and a need to actually do it. But that's when the two come together. When I can structure and run my business the right way, but also when I have a vision and a tool that helps me get clear for just one of those things, which is doing what I truly love, getting clear on what is that work that I truly love, and then I can get into a position to focus there more and do less for the good of the business and for the good of me.
Absolutely. And the delegate and elevate, as you said, also applies to the personal life. How many things do we do that are not necessarily also, maybe we love doing it, but it doesn't really give us the most return on investment. I mean, if we are parents, but we spend time doing things around the home, or that you can hire somebody to clean your house, for example, and you can actually spend quality time with your kids, that can be an example of like how you're actually delegating something from your home life to somebody else so you can actually concentrate on those things that matter.
Absolutely. When I look at it, we do so much. One of my passions with both on the business side, but also on the personal side, working with business owners, is how do we not live a life by default, but rather by design? I've got a good friend, Scott Rusnak, whose phrase is, design your life before someone else does it for you. And so I think that it really is an opportunity to look at all of those things consciously. I almost everyone I know, I shouldn't say it that way, a huge percentage of people that I know cut their grass. Well, if you truly love it, that's wonderful. But I'll tell you, if I look at that by my quadrants right now for where I am, I think I'm actually pretty good at cutting the grass, but I don't love it. I shouldn't be doing that anymore. Because
to love it, it might be like, it can be that, I like cooking, right? But does that mean that I have to do it every night? Does that mean that I have to do it all the time? No, I can do it in special occasions or when I feel like it, and then satisfy that, like, oh, I created this amazing meal for my family, right? But it doesn't mean that I will do it every single time, because it might not be the best utilization of my time, right? Yeah. So I think it's cutting grass. Maybe it's therapeutic for some, and you want to drive the lawnmower, and then you can think and you can look and you can come up with bright ideas. That's great. So you can do it from time to time, but it doesn't mean that you have to do it all the time, right? So I think that also comes into that equation, because I like cleaning, I like when things are clean and organized, and it gives me, I like to do it's something different I'm doing with my hands and I'm working in, but it doesn't mean that I'm going to do it every week, right? Because that is not necessarily the best utilization of my time and the best utilization of my time for the greatest good for my company or my family, etc., right?
I think that's exactly the thought process. And for example, for me, that's a very conscious thing, which is what I like doing. In fact, I might love it. I'm not sure I'm great at it, but I like doing it. I'm pretty good at is taking my kids for carpool. I love that time of being able to spend time with my daughter. It's sometimes it's the only moment that we can catch. We might be quiet in the car, but it matters. That's at the top quadrant. Cutting grass for me is at the lower quadrant. How do I think about delegating and elevating? So that's just one example of, I think similarly, there are tools and disciplines one can use for doing work with people I love. There are tools or disciplines for the other concepts that we talked about as well.
Absolutely. And I think this is a great place to actually, if our listeners want to hear more about those tools, how should they contact you? What is the best way to reach you or reach out to you?
You bet. I think maybe in your notes, the easiest way to reach out to me is give me a phone call. It's send me an email. You can find me on my website. And we can get those to you. I would do it on verbally, but the spelling of my last name might make it a little bit complicated. So we'll get those in the show notes.
Absolutely. It will be on the show notes, but maybe somebody's driving right now in the car and they go, I want to call Eliot right now. So why don't you at least give the number so they can just do it, because don't miss that opportunity.
So give me a call, 503-819-9813. It would be a pleasure to speak with you.
Absolutely. So Eliot, how do you overcome if somebody tells you nobody can do it as good as I can? What do you say to that? How do you help people overcome that?
Yeah. I think that there are two parts to it. So when I'm working with a leadership team, if I transition back, one of the first concepts that I think about is if you have a broader team or a broader organization, but this applies in our personal life too, is so often when we're growing organizations, we grow them by accident, because what really good business owners and really good entrepreneurs do is oftentimes they didn't get into it because they love the art and science of business. They're just really good at what they do, and they happen to be really good at attracting and cobbling together people. But at some point in time, you wake up and it's sort of accidental. Someone will do a little bit of this, but they won't do that. Someone will do another part, but they're not going to do something else. And so the discipline that I teach teams is we call it the accountability chart. But the way we really think about it is, can we just get really clear on what are the functions that have to get done? And you can do this in your personal life and in your business life. What are the functions that have to get done really, really well? Marketing and sales, operations, finance, whatever it might be, general administration, office assistant. If we can get clear on that, that describes the seats that we need to have. And there are two parts then of what we need to have. One is that I need to be surrounded by people who truly fit my values, my core values. And that's not aspirational. Those are the behaviors that I just need to see all around myself, the true behaviors that I have to see. And behaviors repeatedly demonstrated become culture. But one is making sure that there's a fit with the person that I'm working with from a values or behavior standpoint. The other is, we sometimes use the phrase, get it, want it, have the capacity. If I'm clear on the function that's got to get done, does this person truly get it? Do they truly want it? Do they truly have the capacity? Do they have the intuitive ability? Do they want it? Do they have capacity? And then I need to find the person who could do that, who fits both of those descriptions. They fit my core values and they truly get it. They want it. They have the capacity. And if I know what I'm looking for, first of all, I can find it. The other part, I think, so often ends up, and the magic is when I find that right person for that right seat, they're right for it. The things that I want to delegate to them, what keeps me from delegating so often is I'm trying to give things to people who don't get it, want it, the capacity, then I have to step in and help out. But the reality is the things that I don't like doing, that I'm not good at, the magic of this beautiful world with billions of people, there's someone else who's ready to take that. And that's their gift. That's what's in their top quadrant. And that's when the magic happens. So if I'm clear on the seats that need to happen, then I can be clear. Then I find the right person. And if I found the right person, chances are they're really great at the things that I'm not so strong at. And now we've got a complement. And I'm going to give a really, really simplistic example. I happen to not be a natural delegator. Maybe that's why I'm good at teaching it, because I'm passionate about it, because it doesn't come naturally to me. And so, again, I'm going to give a really small example, but the teams that I work with, I work with $600 million companies where this becomes much more impactful and different. But a really simplistic example, which is I just looked at what I was doing with my assistant, and I was rebooking a flight because I can never book a flight right the first time. I always pick the date wrong. Then I pay for the ticket. Then I have to cancel it. Then I have to rebook it. And I'll tell you, the sign that says that I'm not good at it and that I should be delegating it is, I feel like I'm choking. It's somewhere in my heart or my gut or my neck. I just don't like doing it. That should have been the signal. And after years, I'm still booking my own flights, and I'm sitting with my assistant, and she's saying, just give it to me. I got it. Because that is her knack, among her other knacks, is just being able to do those things super efficient in a fraction of time. She's got a decisiveness that I don't have. Her mind works that way. She just wants to bang things out like that. That's what gives her, she's good at it. Great. What in the world was I thinking that I couldn't delegate that task to someone else because I couldn't do it better than someone else could? Not at all. So I think those are the two parts. You've got to build an order. You've got to get clear on the seats. that you need in the organization. You then get clear on the roles that have to be fulfilled by each seat. You're clear on the core values. You're clear on what it means to truly get it, want to have the capacity, get the right person in, and then just let go of the vine, let go of the reins, get it off of your plate, delegate it. And, I think Dan Sullivan and Ben Hardy have a book and a phrase that says, who, not how. Get it off of your plate to the who, let them worry about the how, and you can course correct later. So hopefully that helps out.
Absolutely. So well said. Wow, Eliot, this has been a tremendous conversation, really tying together the personal, the purpose, the ideal life into also using the company as a vehicle in order to actually achieve that. So thank you so much for being a guest on this podcast and sharing the knowledge. And I definitely encourage our listeners to contact you and find out more about what you can do to help them.
Absolutely. And again, my passion to everyone is live your life by intent. There's an opportunity that all of us as business owners have to have a systematic way of operating our company that lets us run our company better, drive growth, but also live a better life. And then as we look at our lives, there's an opportunity for us to be able to do that by intent. And for all the listeners that are out there, I hope you take advantage of that opportunity.
Great words of wisdom. Perfect to finish this podcast. So thank you so much again, Eliot, for being a guest.
Thank you. My pleasure.
Thanks for listening to the System Simplified podcast. We'll see you again next time, and be sure to click subscribe to get future episodes.